trying to make fun of us. Thank you. That's very discreet. I've got one final question. I'd just like to come back to the issue of medicinal marijuana and some of the discussions you had with Senator Lionhill and Senator Di-Natale.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you a bit further about the Greens disallowance motion. And what do you think, maybe not, sorry, your assessment, of course you want to ask with personal opinion, but what would have been the outcome of the recent, the Greens disallowance motion
I
from
can
a
only,
departmental perspective?
Senior bureaucrats do not have opinions.
No.
I can only comment on what the practical outcomes in law would have been, and that was precisely the sort of thing we were asked to brief on.
Yeah.
So there would have been three outcomes. Firstly, that imported products would have been available through the Special Access Scheme A system. Mm-hmm. Second, that there wouldn't have been any Commonwealth controls on extemporaneous compounding of medicinal cannabis products. Now that sounds a bit obscure. That's where pharmacists compound products, and while most pharmacists are honourable people, there's been significant problems with compounding of certain substances, be they hormones, peptides and so forth. And the third implication, which I talked about before the recess, relates to the fact that it would have opened medicinal cannabis products up for personal importation.
Yes.
And the challenges it has, well, it's because it's not a defined, many of the dose forms are not defined tablets or capsules, and it could have been raw leaf coming in, and it's very hard to know whether a kilogram is the right amount or 20 kilograms for 3 months' supply.
So would this have had, so between those three consequences, potential consequences, is there a law enforcement or border control sort of implications for that?
There would have been border control implications for the, well, for all three, but particularly the personal import. And we discussed the potential disallowance was well known. As you know, it was out there for longer than the normal period of time. And we had meetings with the states and territories, and they were essentially unanimous in sort of saying, we don't want this, it'll just create a nightmare at Brisbane Airport, Darwin Airport, wherever. So
the state and territory governments were supportive of this position?
They were supportive of the position that ended up prevailing.
Okay. And final question is...
I should say at officials level,
yes.
We've got to be careful in defining governments.
Yep. But at the officials level, they were...
At the senior officials level, they were supportive of the changes to... They were consulted before the changes to the regulations were made, and they were supportive of regulations staying as they were following the change. So
it's one of the, just so if I've got it right, one of the implications of those three issues that you've been talking about this evening is that it would have actually made it harder to control the cannabis being provided in terms of quantity and quality.
Very much so, and it was particularly timely because there had been one and possibly a second death in California because of fungally contaminated medicinal cannabis. And also, very recently in Canada, some bright spark decided to use a fungicide that's used for lettuce on medicinal cannabis. Now, you might say, so what? Well, people don't smoke lettuce, and when this fungicide in its residues on the cannabis, well, most people don't, when the fungicide on the lettuce, on the cannabis is heated, smoked or vaporised, it breaks down and turns into cyanide. And some millions of dollars of medicinal cannabis had to be recalled and destroyed in Canada when this was discovered.
So I get, like any other medication that you get, you need to be able to control the dosage, so you know exactly how much and what you get. And
the quality. So Senator, the view of the government, and I think it was echoed across people who spoke to the bill in February 2016, was firstly that this would be a medicine prescribed by doctors and dispensed by pharmacists, and that would be produced to certain quality standards. So, and that was the whole advantage of a medicinal cannabis pathway versus a grow your own or get it through a black market pathway.